Hello and welcome to Riff Vues. This is part 3 of our look back at Mariko Tamaki's She-Hulk series, and I feel that I need to make a little bit of a correction. You see, in the last video, I said that issue 162 would be the cancellation of the series, it'd be the final issue. I'll be honest, I do not know what I was thinking. I realized it after I uploaded it, and I just did not feel like going back and fixing it. Issue 163 is the final issue. I decided to use 162 as a standalone because I knew it'd be an epilogue, and I stand by that. I think that it works pretty well as a separate from the leader storyline. So let's go ahead with that out of the way and take a look at issue 162 of the Jen Walters Must Die storyline. Now here we have the cover. It's an okay cover. They're doing a journey to the center of the mind thing. It is what it is. It's not particularly bad. It's not particularly good. It's just pretty okay. I think, though, that it should be Jen in the middle in a fetal position with Green She-Hulk on the outside in the middle, and then Gray She-Hulk on the far outside. Just reverse the two. Because it just makes it seem like Green She-Hulk is the most real self of Jen. Maybe it's on purpose. I know they're trying to get back to what happened to Green She-Hulk, but that's just my take on it. Like I said, it's a relatively okay cover. Opening to the beginning of the story, and we have Jen inside of Aunt Flo's kitchen. She, at the end of the last issue, she decided she was going to see Aunt Flo to get to the root of her problem. And in this scene, we see that she's standing in the kitchen being offered tea. Jen is giving some dialogue, some internal monologue about Aunt Flo being a tea fanatic and how Aunt Flo had been writing Jen to come see her and come to her house. And Jen does say that she did a full criminal search on her, but she also says that Aunt Flo is her last resort. And to this I say again, Doc Samson. Yes, that's really bothering me. And then Mariko is trying to be funny again about cutting out the internal monologue and kind of a little bit of fourth wall breaking. And we'll see this will come back on the next page because Jen starts doing her internal monologue again and how she had trouble calling Aunt Flo. She was afraid to, and she's talking about when she finally called Aunt Flo and just said, "Help me," and they try to be funny and say, "I said no internal monologue." So, I said it before, she's not funny. This is a little bit more subtle, but it's still kind of fourth wall breaking. I'm going to let it go on this one. It's not as hard trying to be funny as earlier issues. But then, something weird. I know she says she did a full criminal check on Aunt Flo, and we see that Aunt Flo has a very helpful pill. Now, she had just earlier referred to Aunt Flo as a stalker. So, she goes to her stalker's house, and her stalker is offering her tea and a pill. Now, thankfully, Jen is a very smart character. She would never, ever take something. Oh no, she took it. Can I make the Brazzers joke again? Or would that be in bad taste? I don't want to be really, rate. I'm not going to say it, but why is Jen so stupid in this series? It's mind-boggling. She just takes it without thinking. I don't even eat food that people bring into work, let alone pills that strangers would give me, so at this point, whatever, I'm kind of done. Jen is an idiot in this series. We've established that. So, Jen starts tripping balls. She becomes a floating head, and then Aunt Flo does too. And the artwork kind of gets cartoony for a while, like even more so. I mean, this one part, I thought Jen looked like what's-her-face, Katara from Avatar The Last Airbender. So then Aunt Flo decides, to help be metaphors, that she's going to be a floating head too. Now they keep talking about being metaphors and being floating heads. I'm not quite sure if they're going for, again, another fourth wall joke, that they're just talking heads and not a lot of action. So far, I haven't seen that kind of wit from Tamaki in this series. If it was on purpose, that'd be almost kind of clever, but I really haven't seen evidence of that to support it, so they keep talking about the metaphor, and it's, whatever. So, as they're floating heads, Jen finds that the Gray She-Hulk is there, but without a head. And, of course, she tries to make a joke that you can't talk back because you're a body with no head, ha! And then you see this second panel, and Jen reacts to, oh, that's nice, real mature. I just gave myself an obscene gesture. Yeah, it makes no sense, because obviously Gray She-Hulk was flipping Jen off, based on the dialogue. And they edited it before it went to print, so nice try at a joke there. It actually would have been kind of funny, but again, editorial, if you're going to edit out the setup, you need to fix the punchline. You need to change it. And that's the problem with a lot of Marvel these days. Things that editorial should be grabbing, they aren't. So they whip out a couch out of nowhere in this astral plane again. So yeah, Gray She-Hulk does not like Jen because she's afraid. And Jen goes ahead and builds herself a body, and Jen's talking that Gray She-Hulk is out of control, except for the times in the series when Jen seems to be perfectly in control as She-Hulk. And that's where we come to the inconsistencies. Anyway, Gray She-Hulk is out of control. We're trying to get back to the Green She-Hulk. And so, as she's exploring into her mind, she comes upon an image of Thanos, who is taunting her and getting huge, and grabs her, and Jen says to Thanos, "You didn't break me, you just put a little hole in my chest." We've already seen this retcon. In the original Civil War, the lead up to it, I'm blanking on it, I think it was a Civil War 2, issue 0, where we see the actual battle. We see that it's a missile that hits her in the chest. It's one of War Machine's missiles. And then they changed it to where Thanos is smashing her and pummeling her. And now he put a little hole in her chest. Then why does she have scars everywhere? Why does she have a scar on her chest? You know what? The book doesn't care. So, you know what? I don't care. If they don't want to cover what happened and pay attention to it, then I'm not going to either. And so she turns into a green fist, and She-Hulk's back. Green She-Hulk, our She-Hulk, is back. So she had a little bit of revelation there. I guess she got to have her revenge on Thanos, so yay. And then she turns back into her Jen Walters form and finds Bruce sitting on some mushrooms. She made an Alice in Wonderland joke earlier about tripping balls, and it seems to be coming true here. So she sits down and has a conversation with Bruce. As she talks with Bruce, they make more allusions to fourth wall breaking, that he only comes and tells her plot-relevant things. It's almost like Mariko learned some subtlety in this, but it's also kind of too little, too late. And, also this scene where she's talking to Bruce, it would have had a lot more impact if, one, it had happened earlier in the series, like I said, where she's coming to terms with how she feels about, Bruce now that he's dead. And secondly, it would have more impact if we did not know that Bruce is coming back. Granted, this was written months ago. I'm not sure how close to when she knew it was going to be canceled. And I'm sure she would have known, well, Marvel knew, the editor, I'm sure, knew that Bruce would be back, in time for the new Avengers movie. And he was already in Thor Ragnarok, so again, nobody thought that Bruce was going to stay dead. So it kind of takes away this kind of touchy-feely part. So Jen and Bruce start talking about Bruce's suicidal pact he had with Hawkeye to kill him if he should ever Hulk out. And Jen starts yelling at him about that, and they fight. Pretty neat fight scene where they change blows while arguing that, you know, he should have told Jen if he was about his plan and about his worries, implying that now she has those same worries about losing control. And it has a little touching scene about how much she misses him, and that, you know, he tells her that she can go on without him. And then we see at the bottom of the panel that she's no longer Greyhawk again. She's back to being, you know, Green She-Hulk. So Jen wakes up from her LSD acid trip, whatever that Aunt Flo slipped to her, and she is now Green She-Hulk again. She's Green She-Hulk back in the real world, and she's somehow wrecked Aunt Flo's house around her while Aunt Flo is sitting comfortably. But yeah, she is Green She-Hulk again, and the art is pretty bad at this part. You know, especially those stretchy hands, it's really rushed. I kind of think that the cancellation happened during this issue, and they kind of had to rush and change the ending because the art is just doesn't seem to really line up. Especially, there's a lot of weird beats in this issue, you know, where questions are asked and the answers don't seem to really line up exactly. You know, when Jen is asked by Aunt Flo, "How do you feel?" and Jen just says, "What?" And so the issue ends with Aunt Flo and her dog sitting at the door. I kind of wonder if Aunt Flo is based on someone, and this is actually a photograph that they used as reference. I want to make Grandma and her dog famous. So she asks again, "How do you feel?" And Jen says, "Better. I think sad, but better. And a little more like me." And then it says, "To be concluded." Issue 163 will be the last issue. Not this issue, like I said, but we have Green She-Hulk back. And this issue is kind of a wrap-up to the previous several issues of the Jen Walters Must Die storyline. Is actually, like the cover, pretty okay. This wasn't really a bad issue. Mariko did not have her crutches that I've been complaining about. The pacing was actually pretty good in this issue. And there was no flashbacks. That's the real amazing part. Okay, she slipped in an LSD trip, and again, Jen is an idiot, taking pills from someone who she even calls a stalker. And, you know, she talks about how desperate she is, last resort. Again, 2 words, Doc Samson. Why she not gone to him? I don't know. Now, one thing that I felt was missing from this issue was a more of an explanation of why Jen was a gray She-Hulk with glowing scars. Now, obviously, it was all mental once she made peace with Bruce's death, got over her trauma and coma after her Thanos battle. She emerged back into the real world in her Green She-Hulk form with no scars on her, you know, whatsoever. She looked pretty much like the She-Hulk we all know and love. I kind of wish they would have explored that a little bit. Now, I mean, not the trauma, but I kind of theorize that, you know, her gray She-Hulk form was very masculine. Of course, they tried to go with the rage thing. Maybe they were playing at this, insinuating it, and this series is not done subtly very well, so I'd be surprised if that was the case, because at the end of Civil War II, when she emerged from her coma, she was gray, but she looked more like just her regular Green She-Hulk form, just gray. This one, she was very masculine. She was a lot like when Bruce first turned into the Hulk in his first appearance. He was a gray, brutish monster. And that's what Jen Walters was here. She was this gray, barely feminine, let's be honest, she was barely feminine. Brute sometimes she was articulate, depending on how Mariko felt that day. But she was a more masculine version of herself. And I think that what they should have tied that in was her mentally stepping into Bruce's shoes once he died, and she's talking about how she can't go on without him. She was becoming Bruce. And again, maybe that's what they were going for subtly. It didn't come out very well, but that's just my theory of why she was able to come back. And as you see at the end of the issue, she's in her, ripped but more svelte, more feminine form, the one we all are used to. So, well, thanks for sticking around this long. We have one issue left, issue 163, the real last issue. So I will be back in a month with that issue, but please subscribe because there is more content coming. So once again, thanks for watching.